Okay. So I'm Linda Brubaker, and this is Job Search Lunch and Learn, and I'm really glad that y'all are here. What we're going to be talking about today is the idea of teamwork. But before we do that, let me introduce myself, and I'm going to let Sue introduce herself too. I'm a job search coach, and actually I'm looking for another way of calling what I'm actually going to call myself after Orly's presentation last week, see whether I can come up with another quick term. But what I do is that I work with job seekers at all ages, at all stages of their careers, to help you highlight, showcase your transferable skills to find your next forever job. My goal is for you all to hire your next employer. It really needs to be your decision. You need to take some of those proactive steps and find the right spot for you. So that's what I'm all about. And I'm going to put my information in the chat. Please do connect with me and let me know how I can help. In the meantime, I'm going to let Sue introduce herself. And before I do, I'm going to tell you that next week, Sue's going to be our speaker. You know that I've started bringing in some guest experts to some of these meetings. Sue's expertise is really going to help all of us move forward in our job search. And I'm so excited that she's agreed to be our speaker. So Sue, go ahead.
Oh, Linda, thank you. That was great. I'm known as Sue Mentors in the virtual world. I know a lot of you on this call already. It's been great to be part of this group. Thanks to Linda. I have a global mentoring practice with professionals just like Linda at all levels of transition, all ages. And I love that Linda and I early on, when Linda started her consultancy, realized that, as I say, I help you turn tasks in, or she came up with this title, tasks into accomplishments. I'm all about evidence-based results. And then Linda talks about helping you then use your transferable skills to take that story. But the most important thing is I always bring the pom-poms. So I celebrate everything because even rejections can be an opportunity for you to reframe and reach out to people in a different way to learn whatever, but also so that you know you have support here. So you'll often see me pick up pom-poms. When I'm on mute, you just watch the pom-pom window will show up. Thank you for inviting me for next week, where I will talk about going from tasks to actually accomplishments, especially important for all of us knowledge workers who don't have numbers of cars we sell or beautiful landscape designs we can point to. If anybody wants to either DM me in the chat today or through LinkedIn, DM me, and you'd like to give me an example or two from your resume or your LinkedIn profile that you want, that would help me. Also, I'll be looking for other mentees who've given me some information. But if you want the benefit, I'd love for you to be a volunteer, and I can anonymize it for you, or you could be featured on stage with me. Thanks very much for having me.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Okay, and I love the idea of being able to give her some of those suggestions in advance. I think that always helps. By the way, please, you can reach out to me anytime we're doing this. I always tell you what the topic is going to be for the week in advance. So if you want to, please send me your own questions for that topic or some examples that you'd like to bring up. I want to make sure that these sessions really work for you. So you help me to help you all, and I really appreciate that. Okay, we're going to do a quick, idea of the wins for the week. For those of you who've been here before, if you've got a win, and whatever that win is, raise your digital hand and we'll call on you. Let's try and make these relatively short though, okay? Because we've got a lot to talk about. I saw Joe had a win. Okay. Allie's hand is up. Unmute, Allie.
Oh, should I go?
Yes, please.
Okay. So while I was in this call last week, I got 3 interviews. So I'm still counting, make sure that I get some. So one of them was with I think is the final, the entire executive team where there are 5, 6 people on the call is a panel interview. I think it went well. But the thing about interviews, I haven't been able to break the code. There was another one, talk with the internal recruiter, and after that, she immediately set up another interview with the hiring manager and another person. They're a small company. for tomorrow, which I need to get prepared. And then there was one recruiter reach out to me for a small company, but the company has been in business for long. I had a call with her on Monday, and she just said that they pass on me. They have other candidates. But so I still have another interview to go, and I had 3 interviews in a week. So that's, to me, not too bad. And again, I'm hoping to get more interviews while I'm in this call. So
Maybe we'll be your good luck charm.
absolutely. Thank you.
Of course. Okay. I saw Frank.
I also 3 interviews in 3 days coming up. Last one is tomorrow. So hopefully we'll see what happens with the second round if I get through this first one tomorrow.
Fantastic. I love hearing this kind of activity. Thanks for sharing. Sherry. Sherry, we can't hear anything.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Sherry Heddenberg. Actually, it was a loss first. That kind of turned into a win, but not exactly a win-win. It's more of a learning experience. So I had an in-person interview last week where I thought I was going to be the lead candidate in the situation. And they ended up choosing somebody else. But what I did, I usually write my rejection thank you letter. Okay. So I got on a call with my job coach, told him the situation, and he helped me rewrite what I would have sent for my thank you or rejection job letter. So that was good. But most importantly, because I feel like I flubbed up during the interview, he told me a technique to use with the interview, and it's the letters are L-E-A-R, lear. The first one is listen. The second one is explore. I forget what the A stands for, and then the other one is respond. So it's basically so that I won't flub up in future interviews. That technique is opening my eyes so that I can be better prepared for upcoming interviews.
I think that's a great advice. And so Sherry had 2 great points, one of which is when you get a rejection after an interview, always send a thank you and thank them for the opportunity, thank them for what you've learned. Okay, remind them what you've learned there, why they're an interesting company. Ask them for advice and support in the sense of, gee, this is such a great company. I really loved what I heard about the position. Can you give me some advice as to how I might better prepare for a role like this with this company or someone else in the future? By adding that piece, that someone else, it takes the burden off of them, and they are more likely to provide you feedback, especially because what you're saying is not what did I do wrong and hire me anyway. It's be my mentor, give me that support and that advice moving forward, because I really want to be able to learn and grow. And I think that it is a more effective way. It's no guarantee that you're going to get feedback, but we found that you are more likely to get feedback that way. Also ask them if it's really a company that you want to stay with. You know, I really enjoyed this so much. I learned so much. You're doing such great things. Would it be okay with you if I kept in touch for future positions? Or just if I kept in touch? When you do that, don't bombard them. Don't stalk them. Don't do it too often. But now you've got that reason to continue to post comments on their page, to continue to follow them and to post on their posts from individuals, including the person you've spoken with, and then to follow up every perhaps 3 to 4 weeks. I wouldn't do it any more than that, but it's a way of just keeping in touch. So normally I would say every 1 month, maybe every 2 months, just as a way of keeping your face out there. Your name is already going to be known because you're already doing some of those posts to begin with. So that's really there. Okay. So that's great. One of the other things that Sherry mentioned is that too often in interviews, we have a tendency to over prep. And so we want to give the answer that we've prepped, not necessarily the answer that matches the question. So it's really important during every interview not to be thinking about what you want to say right away, but to think about what it is they're asking and to think about how you can change your answer, your pre-prepped answer, to really match what they need and what they're talking about, and to build on from one question to another, because they're giving you lots of information as you move forward. So the more you can tailor what you're saying, even on the fly, and especially on the fly during the interview, it really helps. So yes, I'm a fan of getting some ideas down. I am not a fan of writing down a response and trying to memorize it, or having any of that kind of pre-written, whether you're going to memorize it or not. It's too hard to then tailor it as you go. You're more concerned about saying what you wanted to write or what you've written down. So prep, but don't over prep. Okay. Perfect. So always remember to listen before you talk. Wonderful. Any other successes that anybody wants to share? All right. Then what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about teamwork. So I'm just curious, if you've ever seen working in teams or teamwork on a job posting, can y'all please raise your digital hand, or just in the chat, just write, yep. Okay. How many people have seen them? Yes, put it in the, no, I don't mean Microsoft Teams. Microsoft Teams is another program like Zoom. What I mean is, on any of the job descriptions, do they say, working in teams, teamwork, leadership, team environment, matrix environment? Yep. Team player, cross-functional teams. Okay. Almost all job descriptions will say that in one way or another. Now, working in teams, you either love it or you hate it, but it's not going away. So do you all have any questions? What are your concerns about working in teams? And then we're going to talk about how we can turn not only some of those concerns, but some of the questions that you may be asked about teams to your advantage. So does anybody have a question or concern about working in teams? Shelley, is your hand still raised for saying that you see that in job postings, or do you have a question?
I need to remove that. I'm good. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Anybody have any questions about working in teams?
Lori has one.
Thank you very much. And I see Al also raised a hand. Lori first.
Yeah. I have a question. So this working in teams, especially when you're like newer to a group or a position, and you're just kind of like put together, forced to work with people that they don't have the time to work with you, they don't want to work with you, they don't like you. And they don't like you because they don't want to work with, they have an automatic bias, they're like, oh, they worked with whatever, they just have preconceived notions. I'm just being raw, direct, because this stuff happens this happens all the time in life. How do you quickly, because the project just to be like roll out, how do you quickly bring them into the fold? And I've done this before, and I've tried like everything. So what is your top 3 solutions, besides taking him out to lunch, buying him, cakes and cookies and and, trying to win him over?
Okay.
What do you do?
In this role that you're talking about, Lori, are you a team member or a team leader?
Everybody is just a team member. There's no team leader.
So it's hard when you're coming into that pre-existing team, because you're right, you're absolutely the new person on the block, and they've got a standard way of doing things. the idea of bringing cakes, cookies, whatever to a first meeting, not a bad thing, but I'm not sure that it's something that I would necessarily do. You could. If you're the team leader, I might be more likely than a team member. But what I might do is make sure that when you're doing it, you're addressing your conversation. You're going to, let's see, instead of just broad conversation or broad comments in the group, make sure that each time you're making a comment, at least in those initial couple of meetings, call somebody by name. It's a way of trying to make that initial connection. Now you're talking to them as individuals as opposed to just as a group. Try and use your conversations as a way of building the conversation and moving it forward as opposed to critiquing anything that's out there. Are there specific kinds of situations that you're talking about? Can you give us a better example?
Well, actually, you said I was coming into this. This was a new team, and everybody was just put together. It wasn't an existing team, a new team, and this has happened throughout my career, different careers, and you're just thrown together, and you're expected to do this project, and people are like, "I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. I don't like working with you. I have better things to do," and this just happens in life.
It absolutely does. Anybody have any?
There's no team leader. There's no team leader.
Not even a de facto one? So there may not be one named. Can somebody take on that kind of role for a while?
Well, somebody's supposed to take on the role, and nobody wants to, because that means that they have to then lead the project.
Got it. Okay. Anybody have any suggestions for Lori before I chime in? Okay, Al, I'm assuming your hand is up because you've got another situation you want to talk about.
Yes.
Sherry. Okay, Sherry.
You want me to share it, you said?
No, right now we're dealing with Lori.
I suggest taking the lead. If nobody wants to do it, take the lead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Sherry. That's what I've done, and that's where I've committed, chop my head off. But thank you for that suggestion. It just hasn't worked, so I'm trying to figure out better ways to not poke myself in the head.
Yeah, you don't want to overcommit yourself, especially in those situations. John.
Yeah, I think when you join a new team or a team is assembled ad hoc, I think it's meeting in person versus Zoom helps you kind of get to know people a little bit better. Also, having something interesting to talk about besides the weather kind of stimulates the conversation. Just like when I meet a potential client in person, you kind of get this social thing going on. Like even in an interview last week, I used to have sell in my house, so my stagers came in and ripped everything off the wall behind me. But I used to have a Gale Sayers jersey hanging right there, and this person was from Milwaukee. So right away we had this, conversation about the Packers and yada yada, and which is a kind of a good way to just make the conversation memorable and then build a little rapport. The other thing I might try to do, if you haven't already, is how do I earn trust? Right? Think about something that it may be a different point of view, or working on a project together that's successful that they can remember you for. That's always a great place to start. But I know I'm preaching to the choir for most of us because we've been doing this for 30 years and that kind of thing. But that might be what I might suggest to try.
Okay, so one of the things is, and some great suggestions there. Unfortunately, teamwork is sometimes it's virtual, sometimes it's in person, sometimes you don't have a choice. Because there are teams that you're working on that may be spread across the country, right? Or across several continents, several time zones. So yes, if you can do it in person, that's great. If you can't, that's fine too. The idea is, how do you make those teams work? Yes, it may be more difficult in a virtual environment, but we're doing it, right? In a sense, the idea of being open to any kind of conversation. So how do you make that work, especially if there is no designated leader and you don't want to be saddled with it? Is that a better phrase, Lori? You You don't want to, right? So, I might start with the elephant in the room. Hey guys, we all have to be here. We may not necessarily want to be, and I'm not sure I'd say that, but I'd like to know let's talk a little bit about our backgrounds, because some of us may not know each other. So I'm going to start by introducing myself. And the idea is I want to know a little bit more about you and what you do and what you think your role is on this team. Talk about what the project is and how we can all make our contributions. Okay. This is a project where none of us can do it on our own, and where we can come up with a better solution together. So before we even start talking about the project itself, let's talk about each other. Let's get to know each other a little bit. How long, and start asking questions. Okay. So tell me more about what you do. And then maybe talk a little bit about, once everybody's had that opportunity, and some people may be reluctant to do it. So somebody may have to take the lead, and if they're not stepping up, go to the person and say, okay, so tell us a little bit about you, Frank. I know I'd never have to ask Frank to do that. He's going to volunteer. But for somebody who's a little shyer, okay, you may need to be able to do that, to be able to start establishing that relationship. So that's one way of doing it, Lori. Then the next would be to say, okay, here's what the project is. And can anybody, I'm still learning what the project is. I think we probably all are. How about we put our ideas up on a whiteboard? You can do that virtually as well as in person. This isn't anybody questioning the ideas as to what they are. It really is a true brainstorming. Let's come up with some ideas. It's another way of getting people to recognize that all ideas are valid and that everybody may have something to contribute. Okay. And you can ask people after that. That should spark a conversation. If it doesn't, okay, guys, I don't want to be the leader of this group, so who'd like to take charge? But for today, for this particular exercise, let me do that. And then who's going to take charge next week? Okay, you might be able to do it that way. Bo, do you have an idea?
I do. John raised a very good point, and that's about commonality. So if you hopefully have some idea who's going to be on the call, whether it's in person or virtual, get on LinkedIn, do a little research, see what you have in common with them beforehand so you're prepared. So then you can have that commonality and you can develop relationships to make it all go better. But commonality is really the key, particularly if you have different kinds of people, maybe people who don't really even get along with you. See what you can do to find out that you have in common to develop the relationship.
Absolutely. And it's not just the LinkedIn. That's the other reason, though, that I like asking, because many times you're going to be thrown into a team setting with people you don't know and in functions you don't know a whole lot about. So that first meeting really is about asking about them and what they do. And then it's easier to build that kind of rapport, build on those common situations. You can even, and I know a lot of people don't like this, you can do an icebreaker exercise of some sort where everybody's thrown in together to try and do something. Those sound hokey. Sometimes they are, but sometimes they work. Any other suggestions for Lauren? Sherry.
I'm trying to put a picture in the chat, which I can't seem to get here. I did send you a text of it, Linda, where it's all about communication. I found it on a Facebook page that says email like a boss. In other words, it's a way of getting people to do what you want them to do. Like, even though you are not a boss, you're still taking authority. You're asking it for it in an authoritative way.
Okay. Sherry, your message to me did not come through.
Okay. I will put it in your lunch and learn
Private group?
group.
Perfect.
Yes.
I appreciate that. Okay. It shows that you tried to, it just didn't come through.
Okay.
Okay. Great suggestions, everybody. Okay. Other questions or suggestions?
Just if I may.
Please.
So based on my experience, sometimes when there is a conflict or not accepting a new member in a team, or people are worried about their job, they're worried about losing control, they're worried about not getting the credit for the job they're doing. So if you could address why they don't want me there, because one of these three or other reasons, and go and directly address that. Hey, I'm not here to take the credit for your job. No, I'm not here to give you more job. No, I'm not here to learn from you and then let you go. So if you could address the root cause, then I find that a lot of time is more effective. Of course, there are reasons that just don't like me because they just don't like me. I can't change that. But when there is a logical reason behind it, again, I'm losing my job, losing control, not getting credit, I have to work harder, or whatever it is that you feel that's their concern, and you address that, a lot of time that works. Because I find in general, people are not bad. A lot of time there is misunderstanding and miscommunication that people act negatively. And if you address that, in most cases, things gets much better.
So I'm not sure, it's a good suggestion trying to address some of those elephants in the room, but I'm not sure I would specifically say, why don't you like me?
Oh, no, that didn't, so then I miscommunicated. I didn't mean it that way. To me, it was like, you find out why that's the reason, why there is a resistance about me in the team, and be able to address that. And sometimes you might not directly address that. It's
Right.
like, if they're worried about the credit and said, give that person a credit in front of the team or the front of the boss that, Bob did a great job. Yeah, I was struggling and Bob came and helped me. And I want to thank Bob for his help. Hey, you give credit to somebody.
Exactly.
And again, don't be phony. That's the
No.
thing. But if you address some of their concerns, and again, you have to, it's more of an art than science. I think that in my past experience, that worked.
I think that's true. So here's another way of looking at it. Instead of saying, why don't they like me? You can start off a meeting with, okay, guys, if you're like me, none of us like being pulled from our regular jobs to do this kind of work. So how about we have a 5-minute bitch session about why we don't want to be here, and then we can move forward. And I would truly, you'd be surprised. Okay, that idea of saying it up front, letting everybody do it, and actually having a timer. Somebody set a timer in the meeting. And when those 5 minutes are up, or whatever time frame you want, and I would never go longer than 10 minutes, but do that when the timer goes up. Okay, I feel better. Now let's get down to the business. That it's an effective icebreaker. It makes people relax a little more, especially if you start, if nobody else wants to. But calling it a bitch session, okay, we know we don't want to be here, acknowledging what the issue is. It helps. Laura, you're laughing. You think it might work?
Anything, yes.
Okay. And because it's not something that you normally see in a meeting, it's different. It makes people stop and think a minute. And it's a way of, in effect, bonding, because everybody's going to say the same kinds of things. Okay. All right. Now that we've all gotten that off our chest, we know we have to be here. Now, how do we move forward? Sue, does that make sense to you too?
Yeah, I was thinking about sometimes those things that are hokey, and I don't mean icebreakers are hokey, but after a while, especially when you're 40 or 50 or 60, and it's like, oh, another icebreaker where we have to interview each other, or, we've all been around the block with those. These things sound hokey, but it helps. It reminds me, Linda, you were sort of giving people a pathway forward. They can see there's an issue, and you're saying have a bitch session, but you broke it up. first do this, then do this. And that's always very reassuring to people if they can see a roadmap going forward, even if it ends up being a little hokey. But as a leader, you're often laughing at yourself to help others laugh with you.
Exactly. Okay. Al, you had your hand up earlier. Was that because you had a question or a situation you wanted to bring up?
No, that was what I
No,
mentioned.
Al, not Allie.
Oh, yeah, I think for me, I'm just thinking about the last position I had, and it was definitely multi-generational kind of a gap. And I think I was up against some people who had been at this particular place for a while, and we're not breaking through as far as like, this is the way we always do it. This is the way we do it here, Al. And as much as I tried, I think there was resistance no matter what approach I took with some of these people. And so I think part of it was, you never know what kind of team you're going to go into. And I was the director. And so I came into this team who was already there. Someone had interviewed for the job that I got. So there was this resistance. And then there was and then between that smaller groups, like we know, sometimes there's that little infighting that goes on, and suddenly you don't fit in. And that's really what, at the very end of that role, they said, "Oh, you know what? We don't think you fit in." And I think that sometimes it's as far as trying to do some of these things with other groups. Sometimes, maybe other people have had this experience. I saw some people mention it in the chat. It's this multi-generational kind of experience that you have with other people. And how do you get past some of these things? And sometimes, I would try to do the icebreaker things that they give me the eye roll. Oh, I don't want to do that. Let's go to an escape room. I don't do that. So it's a lot of that I've seen. And so sometimes going into this, it's like, okay, how do I break through some of this? And I'm open to hearing other ideas about how do you get through when I'm the 60-year-old person and I'm dealing with a 20-year-old person who's just starting off their career and I'm at the end of mine, let's say. So anyway.
Only at the end of yours if you choose to be. Anyway, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I think there was a key word that was said there, which was open. To be open, and having, as hard as it is, that kind of attitude going into a meeting. Just a moment, I think I'm getting some feedback on my. Sorry. But one of the things that I do to move forward is I take a class at a community college. It's just one credit. And I invented a board game there, which I'm very excited about. And one of the things that I learned there is how to work with people of different generations and backgrounds, and to lead with things like, who is good at what? Who wants to contribute what to this project? And trying new things, because what I have found experientially is even if I don't like something, I learn something.
Perfect.
And I think that is important, an important mindset to have going forward in a search or just in life in general. I don't know if people have thoughts about that.
Absolutely. So both Al and Annette brought up some great points. And the idea is sometimes you walk into a team and everybody's already there. It's like walking into a cocktail party, right? And there's a group of people chatting and you're the only new person in the room, and you can either stand on the outside or you can figure out a way to get talking again. That same kind of concept is sometimes you just sit on the outside and you just listen for a little bit and then start to contribute. But you might want to, if you're the new team leader coming into a team, the idea of saying, okay, let's go out to an escape room. Okay, that may be down the road once the team feels cohesive again, as opposed to the initial. Again, I might walk in and the elephant in the room. Hey guys, I'm really excited to be here. So let's talk a little bit about what kinds of things you've been doing. I want to be able to build on your success. So what's really been working, what hasn't, and how can I help? That all immediately puts you into the situation of being their supporter, and that often works as a multi-generational kind of a thing. If you want to really formalize it, one of the things you can do is what's called a stop, start, continue analysis. You may want to wait a little bit to try that, but what that really means is, again, a brainstorming session. Everybody gets sticky notes so that everybody feels anonymous. 3 different categories. Category 1, tell me what's working. Word or 2, what lags. Okay. What would you like to continue? What isn't working? What would you like to change? And what can we do away with? What do we no longer need to do? What are we doing in effect just because? And then by doing that, the whole group will begin to see that they have similar circumstances or may not. And it will give them that opportunity to see that not only are you open and willing to change because you're not dictating anything, it leads to a discussion about how the team can work better. It leads to a discussion about processes. And when processes come into play, then it helps to build not only that team coherence in terms of the work, but it also helps work move forward. Is that okay? So that's another way of doing it. And those stop, start, continue analyses work extremely well once people realize that you really are open to anything and that the initial conversation is anonymous, that nobody's going to know who said what. So that's another way of doing things. That whole idea of multi-generational, though, is another one that I want to come back to, because talking about working in teams, if we're going to turn it around from you integrating yourself into a team to talking about teams in an interview process, we're often getting asked questions about working in teams. How do you feel about working in teams? Right? Tell me about a time that you were working on a team and something didn't work. How do you get people involved in what they're doing? Talking about teams in an interview process as one of your stories or as one of the accomplishments that you're going to be pointing out on your resume or in your cover letter can help you make points beyond what the question is absolutely asking. So, for example, if you're talking about, do you like working on teams? How do you feel about working on teams? I really enjoy it. I know that there are some problems and there could be some issues, but one of the things that I like most about it is not only the ability to develop creative solutions and to put lots of different ideas into play in order to make things work, but it's also the idea of being able to learn and work with people of different backgrounds and ages than I am, because I find everybody has that different kind of perspective. You've now talked about working in multi-generational teams. You've talked about being able to work with people who are both older and younger than you are. You've talked about working in cross-functional teams without having to mention it or having a specific question asked of you. It demonstrates your ability to put those soft skills into play. And that's one of the things actually that I like about teamwork questions, or your ability to talk about working in teams, because it allows you to bring out a lot of those soft skills that you can't really talk about well on an interview, on a resume. Al, does that help at all? Okay. So with teamwork, you're going to get a lot of questions about it. And it could be anything from, tell me about a time that you worked in a team and it didn't work. Okay. To tell me whether you like working in teams and why or why not. That tell me about why you like working in teams or not. That's more of a cultural question from a company's standpoint. There are no right or wrong answers. They're not looking specifically for why you like working on teams or don't like working on teams. What they're looking for is whether or not your view of teamwork matches theirs. If you say that you like working in teams and they're an individual contributor kind of an organization without a lot of that, well, then that could be an issue. Or if you say, teamwork, I know I have to put up with it, but I much prefer working on my own to get things done. It's faster. and they are a teamwork culture, that could raise another issue for them. So while it's difficult for you to discern necessarily what their view of teamwork is, without doing some informational interviews in advance with people who are either at the company or who have left the company, this is a question where they're saying, do you like working in teams where you need to be honest? Because you want to be able to match, you want to be able to hire them as your company too. By the same token, if you can't stand working in teams, don't say that necessarily. But talk about both working in teams as well as working on your own, and give some pros and cons from your perspective to both. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to read some of the chat as well. By the way, if you're putting stuff in the chat that you want us to consider or to talk about, please raise your digital hand, because otherwise I may not get a chance to see it in the chat. I will get to it in the private group, but I may not get to it here. Sue.
I don't have a question. I have a comment. I
Please.
saw the exchange from Alexandra, and Alexandra posted about Jamboard, and Louisa answered also. Maybe it would be worth raising this issue of what digital tools, what virtual tools do you use to make effective communication across virtual and digital, totally virtual and hybrid teams? Because I think that Jamboard's a good replacement for Post-its. I'd love to know what other people are using.
So for those of you who are not aware of a Jamboard, I actually put a link to a Jamboard in the chat. I have a Jamboard that I've set up for this group. It's a way of saying, here are the topics that I really want you to consider, what we want to talk about, because I really want these sessions to be able to work for you. Now, because I'm trying to put these out at least a month in advance, okay, or a month at a time, I may not be able to put that topic together right away. But by the same token, it really helps me to focus on the situations that are important for you. So if you haven't used a Jamboard is a free Google product. It's an online whiteboard. It's an online Post-it note situation. So you can have up to 20 different pages. And on there, what you have would be topics. So for example, on the Jamboard for this group, each page has a topic that you'd like to consider. And what you do is you either add a sticky note that duplicates something that's there so that I know that more people are interested in the issue, or you add a new sticky note. And those sticky notes tell people what you're doing. It's your online brainstorming, the same way that a Post-it note would be in person. It is an absolutely phenomenal tool. I like it. I use it a lot. Now, one of the problems is that I'm hearing that Google may do away with it at the end of the year, but you know what? We still have several months to go. We're going to use what we can. And if they decide to get rid of it, I'll find an alternative and share that with you guys as well. But a Jamboard is a great tool to be able to do that kind of online brainstorming. You all have access to our Jamboard. You don't need to request it. If you have my link, and you all do now, you can go on there at any time. I really don't want you to share a whole lot of resources there. If we want a resource share, we'll either do that in the private chat on LinkedIn, or I'll put up a separate Jamboard. I really want this to be more to what topics do you want us to consider? What issues do you want us to cover? But it truly is a great tool, and go back and forth. I look at it every time I'm trying to put together these topics for us to talk about. But it's a great one to use for your teams too, especially if you're talking about a hybrid team or a remote team. The other thing that I like about a Jamboard, even if you're talking about in-person teams, is Jamboards are completely anonymous. So if you set one up, absolutely no one will know that it's you who put that note there. So if you're trying to solicit comments, questions, concerns, topics, issues, and nobody has to worry about being associated with that up front, people are freer to put down whatever it is they want. There are several other tools as well that can be used. I see Miro and Figma. I haven't seen Figma at all, but I have tried Miro, and there's a couple of others that are useful as well. If you're doing something, for example, in a Zoom setting, we can do an online whiteboard, and you can all have access to that. And we'll try that another time, because I do want to try out some of those tools. They're useful not only for us, but they're also useful for you moving forward in your jobs. Okay, to be able to bring or to use some of those tools as you're moving forward. So thanks, Sue, for bringing that up from the chat, because I'm busy looking at all my Brady Bunch screen over here. And unfortunately, I don't get the opportunity or don't take the time to read a lot of the chat, and I will come back to you for that. Okay, one more. One other way that I really like using your team answers, and I often suggest that you talk about teamwork, even if the specific question isn't asked. Because teamwork, working with other people, whether it's in a formal team or an informal team, happens in every job. You have to collaborate with somebody in a different function or different department. You have to work together to solve a problem or to come up with some sort of a project or an answer. Talking about teamwork, bringing it up, gives you the opportunity to demonstrate leadership skills, whether you have that manager title or not. Several of you have asked me, how do I show my leadership skills? I've never been a manager, but I want a manager job. Teamwork, the role that you play in that team, talking about it, gives you the ability to demonstrate those skills without the title. And it gives you the ability to showcase that experience without having the title. So there are ways of doing that. We've already talked about it as a way of talking about multi-age, working with people of all ages. Not only does that talk about the multi-generational aspects of the workforce, but it's also a way of countering that idea of ageism. One of the concerns many people have about us as older people, and I will admit it, I'm in that group. Okay, not the people with the concerns, but the people that the concern could be raised about, right? Definitely not a young kid. But the ability to work with people of different ages is one of the concerns that some people have about us as we get older. So talking about those multi-generational groups helps. Talking about what you may have learned from someone who is younger than you in that team gives you the ability not only to talk about countering ageism, but it also counters the idea that you can't learn or won't learn something new. You can also use your teamwork answers to talk about ageism in other ways. Being able to provide mentorship, support to other employees was another way of working at it. There are lots of different things that you can use those teamwork related questions to bring in that go beyond the question. And it's not like not answering the question, sharing, okay, because you're really listening. It's bringing in added things to help you answer. Because here's something that most recruiters, most hiring managers will never tell you. The question isn't just about the question. In many cases, for a lot of these questions, there are no right or wrong answers. What I'm looking for is the way you're answering and the additional information you're bringing in. I have, in addition to my, did you answer the question? Did you give me the information I want about, can you do this? How do you do this? I also have what many people call an interpersonal rubric. And what that says is, for this question, in addition to, can you do X? I'm looking for you to demonstrate communication skills, facilitation skills, ability to work with people of different ages, ability to learn something new. How do you handle conflict? I'm going to bring all of those things into my evaluation of your answer beyond just, can you do X? So your answers truly are not just about what you say, but how you say it, what you're saying behind the scenes. So when I say there really are no right or wrong answers for many questions, there are lots of ways to approach an issue. Unless I'm asking, do you know this programming language? Have you used Microsoft Teams versus Zoom? What do you see are the difference between the two? Those are really knowledge-based questions. Many of the questions that you're going to be asked, however, are not just that specific knowledge. It's that example. Give me that example. And when there are those examples, tell me what's worked for you in a team. I don't care about a right or wrong answer. I'm looking for the way you approached it and what you're going to bring to the process. It's one of the things we forget. And it's one of the things that honestly can make or break you in an interview. The same way that you're looking to hire your next company, as a hiring manager, I'm looking for someone that I think will make that contribution, not just in terms of the work, but of the employee base. This needs to be somebody that I am comfortable working with, someone who understands that the job is not just X plus Y equals Z, but understanding how you get from X to Y to Z. Because for most of us, that's what those jobs are. It's that combination and that not just of attending the class, but what are you pulling from it? What did you get? So often on posts, you'll see, here's the nugget. Here's what I learned. Here's what I'm doing. Anytime you can talk about a learning, about something else that you can bring in there, it really, truly helps. And it brings additional information in that I can use to help me decide whether or not you're the right person for this role. So turn all those questions about teamwork into your advantage by bringing in the way you work, by bringing in all of that information, okay, that you can also use to showcase who you are and what you do. It can be your way of talking about not just the teamwork. It can be your way of talking about problem solving, demonstrating project management, demonstrating facilitation skills, your ability to work with multi-generational workforces, demonstrating leadership. We don't add those terms on your resume. They're not part of the skill set we talk about. They're things that you demonstrate. It's something that is much better shown than just said. And you can show it in your accomplishments, and Sue's going to talk about that next week. But you can also show it in your interview stories, and it becomes an extremely powerful tool in your interview stories. We didn't get to the idea of actually trying to practice some of these, so we will do that another time. But teamwork can be used to your advantage, whether you like it them or not, working in teams, but they are a great way of helping you to push the conversation forward in the direction you want it to go. Other questions about teamwork and answering some of those teamwork questions. Teams aren't always fun. I know that. Okay. I admit that, especially earlier in my career, I was of the, it's easier for me to do it than to teach you, right? I'm going to just do it on my own kind of a situation, but that doesn't always work in jobs, especially if you're looking for a position where you want to be more than just an individual contributor. Because even in those individual contributor roles, you still have to learn to work with other people, because those relationships build on what you can do and help to make what you do better. And companies are really looking for that. Other teamwork or team-related questions that I can answer. Okay, I'm going to put my stuff in the chat again. Okay, the Jamboard is already in there. Please make use of it. Please connect with me. Oops, that's the Jamboard again. Sorry about that. Connect with me. If anybody would like to have a quick 20-minute chat. Okay, so Sue and I both do this with you because we want to give back. We want to be able to provide assistance to all of you, okay, in any way that we can. But in addition, if anybody would like some one-on-one job search coaching, I'm available to help. So here's where you find the videos. Remember to do some networking in that private group. Private groups really mean that nobody else on LinkedIn can see what you say. So it is a safe space and it's a great networking space. I'm going to stop the recording.